Welcome to the attachment point, the roundtable version. I'm your host, Nick Lamparelli. My co-host, he's to my upper left. I don't know where he's going to be on the video. Hopefully upper left as well. Brett Fulmer. And our guest for today is Patrick West of HedgeQuote. Guys, happy Saturday morning.
Cheers. Happy Saturday, guys.
Pat?
Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, how's the weather where you guys are? We had a little storm that came through. It was almost 100 and humid a couple days ago, and now it's like mid-70s. It couldn't be more perfect.
You guys are winning the weather game then today. We're at 100 yesterday. I think it's going to be 100 again today. A little bit humid too. It was actually just in Palm Springs. That dry heat's a little bit nice compared to when it's a little muggy and hot, but you can't complain in Southern California about a couple hot days.
It's a dry heat. You guys have year-round good weather, so stop complaining.
Yeah, exactly.
Pat, how's it in suburban Chicago?
So, coming off of the 100% humidity, 100-degree type of scenario into like 75 right now. And go figure, the power goes out when it's 75. It makes it through the 100-degree weather, but it goes out.
So for the audience sake, that explains why you're in your car.
Not driving, but in my car.
Don't drive.
Not driving.
That you'd be they could find that on social media, and you could get you could become the bad risk.
I was like, when the insurance community gets mad at that on these posts when people are recording while they're driving, and I feel like the good insurance buddies always hop on. I'm like, hey man, get it together.
I'm that guy. That's me. I give people.
Yeah, I see Ryan Hanley do that when he does his videos. I'm like, dude, you're making me nervous, and second, you're making me dizzy. So, we have renamed this to the attachment point. It's a round table, and it's going to be just me, Brett, a version of us, maybe Tony, with a guest. Today it's Pat West of HedgeQuote. Pat, if you can remind the viewers, HedgeQuote, what do you do?
HedgeQuote is a comparison website at the most basic sense of things. And I'm pretty focused on the side gig, side hustle, marketing aspect of the insurance industry. So I use HedgeQuote as an engine to kind of help people search for insurance, and then again focus on the side hustle, side gig folks that are out there, trying to encourage them to kind of join what I do on the marketing side of insurance.
Yeah, I remember. I'll put a link to the show notes to our podcast from last year, I think. And you're an insurance buyer, insurance shopper.
I like concierge for
insurance concierge. I like that. Yeah. So it's a new term, and let's just. What is an insurance concierge? Give us just a couple minutes of how you help customers solve problems.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So it's straightforward. And Brett and I have actually talked about this, that if you go to a barber shop and you ask a barber if you need a haircut, they're going to say, yeah. If you go in there and say, hey, what's the fastest way to make my hair grow? They'll probably tell you to cut it. And those are kind of some of the analogies that Brett and I have thrown back and forth. And, what a concierge, what a digital shopper, what I consider in technical terms a marketing intermediary. What we do is organize quotes, point shoppers in the right direction. So we make referrals. And then the third piece is the piece we don't do, which is actually solicit the policy, get into the insurance advice piece of it. So when it comes time to shop, a concierge, a digital shopper, an intermediary makes recommendations. I always make the joke, it's kind of like when my dad moved to a new town and needed somebody to fix his boat. So he just said, hey, who's your guy, right? And so I've taken that to more of a digital approach. And I think that I've an understanding of all the new players. I have a really good understanding of the existing players in the market. And so what I look to do is say, as an example, if you're a low mileage driver or you're buying a brand new house in Massachusetts, to make a recommendation that isn't based on a Yelp or a Google search, something that's, I've been on the phone with the person I'm going to introduce you to, and then going hands off when the insurance advice piece comes into play. To me, that's what a concierge does. I know there's digital brokers that brand themselves on the concierge side, on the we shop for you side, and there's some really cool groups and platforms that are out there. But the reality is, if they're going to fulfill that sale, they're not really, I think, a shopper. They're still working for themselves and the carrier, where, again, my compensation ends when I've passed you along to somebody that makes sense as far as shopping. So instead of calling everybody, sorry, Brett, instead of calling everybody, every captive and every broker in your area, we skip that 3 or 4 hour run around and say, this is what you're looking for. Here's probably your best bet.
And you let people shop kind of anonymously too, right? Which I think is a huge thing. You get your pricing back without giving away, your direct contact info. I think I'd seen that kind of in the model before.
Yeah. And so I think that piece of it has always been the tightrope. And I'm glad you brought that up because, I always make the joke, but I'm 100% serious in the same stretch. If you get an auto insurance quote that doesn't have your motor vehicle report, what is that? There's really there's not a lot of help that comes with that. So, we just did an update, and one of the pieces that we actually plugged in was Neoteric Agent, neotericagent.com. And basically they're a proposal platform that essentially allows the consumer to say, this is what I'm looking for. Through our intermediary work, we're able to create those quotes through either a local resource or the resources that, we have on a more of a national level. And then the consumer can actually interact right inside of that platform, whether they want to set up a call, just do a message back and forth to get an update, or say, hey, I'm done with this. I don't want to do it anymore. Leave me alone type of thing. So it was about trying to say, like TrueCar does, if you're looking for a car, here's the research that you do on the front end of it. And once you go to the dealership, you feel like you have more info, or you feel like you're more in the driver's seat as a consumer. That's the angle I take on it, Brett. And I think you touched on it. There is, if you want to be anonymous, we've got partners that do that, but just trying to really get somebody into the conversation I think that's the concierge piece maybe that comes into play. And I like that term, certainly.
Thank you. That's a great intro to HedgeQuote. We're going to transition over to the roundtable element of this particular video, and the roundtable's easy. Each of us has a topic that we want to throw out there and have the rest of the group chew on. So I'll get that started. This is the week of 4th of July, and it was announced this week that the Insurtech company Trov will be now coming to the United States. They've tested their model as a proof of concept in Australia. I also believe in the United Kingdom, and now they're coming to the United States. So on-demand insurance, I have very strong opinions. I will link to an article that I wrote at Insurance Nerds regarding on-demand insurance. So before I give my opinion, our guest, Pat West, Trov on-demand insurance. Pros, cons, feelings, what do you think?
Right. So, gosh, like a year ago, I did I think it was 50, maybe a few more Insurtechs that I thought were pretty dynamic. It was actually one of the first articles, posts, if you want to call it that, on LinkedIn that I did. And Trov was in there, in that conversation. And I focus more on the US market, with kind of more of an open eye to what's going on globally. And Trov was easily, in my mind, on an international level, one of the top 2 or 3 platforms that I got excited about and said, okay, this is that difference that I see when I look at the global market and what the technology that's coming into play there kind of versus what I think we have to deal with in the US right now, which is a lot more regulation, maybe. I don't know if that's the piece of it. So to see Trov able to do what they've done, get excited about the platform, and then to see it come into the US, to me, is exciting, but I think it has a message maybe for founders, right? I don't get into the policy aspect quite as much because I don't pretend to know the inner workings of that. But I think I look at the founder level, the Insurtech startup piece of it, and I think to see a group come from overseas with such a dynamic product and now they're live in the US, maybe that's a wake-up call for US-based Insurtech, for us as a community to say, look, do we want these platforms coming from overseas, or should we be getting ahead of that curve now? So yeah, where I'm at on a lot of that piece of it is excited, but at the same stretch questioning, are we keeping up? At us being the United States, are we keeping up more than anything else?
Yeah. Right.
That almost sounded like a political tangent right there. Like, we're going to have to put a tariff on their Insurtech.
All that's missing is a red hat that says MAGA on it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I agree. You want to lead the pack. I think that we're going to mimic probably the most progressive movers and come in later. I remembered Cover actually when I saw that, and I dug into Trov a little bit, and seemed like the big difference between Cover versus Trov was somebody who's backed by Munich Re and kind of had their own paper versus a brokerage model. But what it also reminded me of was in household moves. My background was in logistics, moving and storage. There's pretty standard rates, weights, things you can account for that are all pretty conservative. When you're moving a house and you walk through, you make your quick notes. It just reminded me of like a technology inventory, and you're just kind of strolling through, picking what you want to cover, using data imagery to confirm it's there. And then if it's anything of exceptional value, maybe you have to take some added steps. It's a smart device. They'll be the first mover, but if it proves valuable, I think the Travelers, the Nationwides, everybody else will roll in the same technology in 2 or 3 years. It's kind of like Siemens makes all the little sensors that are on your bumper for if you're going to bump into somebody's car or not. I think they're in most cars, so I'm sure Trove eventually will license their tech or partner out. Somebody behind Cover will do it too. Mm-hmm. So they're just proving the concept. If it works, if it's profitable, everyone else will mimic, before too long, it would seem to me. So.
Have either of you used the app? It's available. Okay, so before they launched in Australia, the app was available in the United States, and it was, as you said, Brett, is a app that kind of creates an inventory of your contents. So that was my first experience with Trove. So I think I used the app. The app was good. The technology is good. It's the business model that I have questions about, and I think that ultimately will not work. I think ultimately the value of Trove will be the technology that they build. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned in the article, what I found using the technology was it actually got annoying. So I was constantly getting so Trove actually will scan your email. So when you buy something from Amazon, it actually says, "Oh, you bought something. Do you want to insure it, or do you want to add it to your catalog of things?" At first, I thought that like, "Oh, that's really cool. I like how they did that. That this is the future." Then it got annoying.
Yeah.
Then it was just like, stop reminding me, and then I just stopped using it altogether. Like it got annoying. So. The question I have for each of you before I go through sort of my list of what I don't like about on-demand insurance is there a threshold? Do people actually want to get intimate with insurance?
I think there's a fulcrum or a tipping point. If it's something like your car, like Pat was saying, you're not driving all the time, yes, you would. But if it's a low-value item that's not in any form of risk, that's not covered on your general policy, I mean, I'm just not sure how often you want to hop in and insure or uninsure it. I think you just want a blanket coverage to where you don't have to think about too much, unless it's a major value item, unless it's a fleet of vehicles doing a construction or a production project, maybe you want to turn that on and off. But for my bike, I think my bike's okay to be insured all the time or not,
Pat?
I like the construction example Brett just gave there, actually, because I thought of it the same way, where when's enough? And, I thought about who would utilize something like this. And I thought, maybe a true insurance nerd would just love this. Like, heck yeah, I want to insure everything on demand as it comes in. But when you think of that, day-to-day typical user, when is that on and off button going to be utilized? And I saw another platform pitched at the Insurance Accelerator. I think you were actually there as well. And I saw a similar kind of switch it on, switch it off platform, and even then thought, where's the personal line connection? And so I think there's the hurdle there. But when Brett gives the construction commercial example, I get back to being excited again. I think about, wow, yeah, like when you're driving through all the construction zones in Illinois, right? 2 seasons. You got winter and construction. Those are just the 2 seasons we have. And it's like 355, 290 are down to 1 lane for miles, but there's nobody working, right? There's no workers out there. The equipment's sitting there. So, wouldn't pretend to know the underwriting aspects of that. But when he mentioned it, that again got me excited about it. So there's that piece of it. They can keep pulling me back in on these types of platforms. I'm just gonna want to follow them, I guess, more than anything else.
Yeah, I just happen to believe that people actually don't want to be intimate with their insurance. There's Bill Wilson pointed me to a video. I was hoping to find, so the video is on YouTube. I'm looking at it now. It's 36 minutes long. I'll put the link up. It has the CEO of Trov on there, and Bill told me that there's a part of the video where even the CEO of Trov admitted that their user, based off of their users' statistics, that generally when they turn it on, they don't turn it off. Because it's awkward, right? Like you go out the door, for a weekend, it's like, oh, let me insure my bike. I'm going to use it. And then you get back. It's like, do I really want to have to remember to turn my insurance off? It gets to what you said, Brett. It's almost seems more reasonable. Like just cover it. The bike, just cover the bike. But it's part of the flaw, I think, that a lot of technologists bring into insurance is that, for other things, it's like, hey, I only want to pay for something when I'm actually using it, and I don't want to pay it when I'm not using it. But that's different than insurance. I don't think people actively want to engage that directly, that intensely, that intimately to have to do it, to have to turn it on and off.
I think maybe like a travel medical insurance might make sense, and your phone could have a sensor like, oh, you're 100 miles away from home. Do you want travel medical on if you're travel a lot for business or personally? But yeah, your incidental items, and it's kind of funny. You alluded to it. We talked a little bit off the record, but they're pricing it at a premium. Then you leave that clock ticking. It's like renting a Redbox movie and keeping it for 10 days on accident. It's not $1.50 anymore,
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that Pat, I'd be interested in your opinion on this, since you're, concierge. So you're actively in, engaging with customers when it comes to this kind of stuff. They don't realize that they're paying a premium for it. So if they forget to turn it off, at some point, you should have just insured it through the traditional route and just left it on the whole time. I gave the example in my article about how humans, like when humans who trade, humans that do investments, they're notoriously bad. They always buy high and sell low. Humans just do that. And I feel like the same thing would happen in insurance. Pat, what do you think about that?
Exactly. So I think that's the piece that, whether it's specifically the Trove model and the things that you've highlighted, or just, I think, Insurtech in general, when it comes to the marketing, a lot of that startup buzz that's trying to be created sounds great. And I think when you start to talk to people that have been in the industry, that have gone through claim after claim and scenarios that you just couldn't believe happened, you work yourself backwards and say, right, but when something goes wrong, everything on the front end that you talked about is washed away. And you and I think we're talking on Twitter about, it was a P2P play. And I think we were talking about, on top of having to file a claim, now I'm worried about these pods of people that are supposed to be my friends or colleagues, that if I file the claim, they lose money. And if I don't file the claim, I'm kind of jammed up. And I think that's where the consumer aspect, I walk it backwards and say, phenomenal job pointing out a friction point, but at the same stretch, when things go wrong, because that's what matters, when things go wrong, what happens? And so this model, they should come out and say, here's a proactive thing we're going to do to remind you, oh, hey, looks like you ride your bike for 24 hours. You've had this on for, 5 days. Are you sure you want to do that? I would be impressed if they added that feature to it.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I'm with you. Yeah, we're basically just paying more for the idea of paying less. I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah. I could go on and on. I will put video links for anyone that's watching, so you can just click over, watch the YouTube video. I didn't want to hoover the entire conversation, so it is a roundtable. So I want to kick it over to our guest, Pat, and you had a particular topic that you wanted to introduce that we could chat about?
I did. So I have fun with writing, and I think that's probably where I came across maybe both of you, was just writing, doing lists and things like that. And I feel like I see a lot of different trends, and I follow Fintech quite a bit as well. Primarily, the topic I came back with and wanted to talk with you guys about was when Forbes came out with their Fintech 50, I think there was 3, maybe 4 companies that I would consider Insurtech groups that I follow. And I know that I've talked to both of you about, they're on that list, right? So Fintech, the financial services marketplace, considers insurance part of that umbrella. But then when you go and you look at, okay, where are the Insurtech that are making finance plays, making Fintech plays? And I see a disconnect there. I see finance and Fintech paying a lot of attention to what the insurance industry is doing. And I don't see quite as much of that, I guess, outward look from the insurance industry. And wanted to talk to you both about what you saw, some of your feelings about insurance more as a financial service where, it's wrapped into like Matic Insurance, right? They're starting to wrap what they're doing into the mortgage process. It's no secret that most agencies in the United States, especially on the independent side, their marketing plan is to go out and meet as many people that are inside of that real estate purchase process as possible and be a resource. My question is this, the Uber moment, and I know that drives people crazy when we use that, but the Uber moment to me isn't going to be anything Insurtech related. I think the strong possible reality all of us might face is that we wake up and somebody like Credit Karma has jumped into it and said, you know what, we're going to do insurance. We're going to broker insurance across the United States. And guess what? We already know, what your house is worth, what you're paying for it. We know what cars are driving, what you owe on them. We already basically know what your quotes look like. It's not that could upend things, I guess, is where I'm at in my mind, and want to pick other people's brain because I've tried to put that out there before. Is Fintech insurance? I think there's an influencer that does that, uses that already. Is that a thing? And
it should be a thing.
It should.
I think it should be a thing. So let's make sure that there's no misunderstanding. I am an insurance nerd. I'm also insurance's biggest critic as well. It's a terrible product. Nobody wants to buy it. I mean, you just have to face that reality. I mean, it just, I have a renter's insurance policy and I have an auto insurance policy. Of course, I would not do without them. The auto is mandated by the state, but I would buy it anyways. The renter's isn't, but I buy it anyways. I derive no satisfaction from buying it, except that I feel like, okay, I'm taking care of my family, and should something happen, I'll be, made whole or whatever. So with that said, I am, Pat, I think we've kind of sent volleyed Twitter tweets back and forth regarding this, and other people have gotten involved, especially Nigel Walsh, who I'm going to have on the podcast. We're actually going to do a host home and away podcast with him regarding that. I just feel like insurance should be abstracted. And from a fintech standpoint, to me, I'm not sure why. This could be complete ignorance on my part. I'm not sure why, from a mortgage perspective, from a lending perspective, that the insurance just isn't embedded in that. I know I've seen that before. I don't know why it didn't get any traction. To me, it just seems like a natural process to embed those and just say, oh, I got a loan and I don't have to worry about the insurance. Fantastic. To me, it just seems like a natural that those two would go together. I can't explain why it hasn't, but they belong together, in my opinion.
I think it's the billions of dollars in marketing and the plus 10, minus 20%, fluctuations of premium that could be associated with it. I just think it's a big machine that kind of always leaves you questioning. So it's hard to embed one anchor thing because you always feel like somebody else has a better deal waiting for you. Oh, we may have lost our buddy.
Yeah. That's okay. Let's talk between us. I am not editing this, so if you're watching this, it's a blooper. We're just going to keep rolling. It could be there could be a regulatory aspect to it. It could be literally, the Department of Financial Services. I have one here, State of New York, Department of Financial Services. They could be coming in and saying, no, you have to keep those separate. Or if you do embed those, there could be onerous rules that the finance companies just says, no, it's too much of a burden for us to embed those. So I don't know what the rules are. I'm coming from a side of ignorance, but it just seems like those two products really naturally marry together.
In 50 states, like you're saying, 50 different regulations.
Yep.
And again, speaking into ignorance on banking, FDIC, I do feel like there's a lot more of a national compliance component to banking that probably makes it a little bit easier to, make all those different plays. The analogy when you guys mentioned it, kind of as we're getting ready for the show, I was thinking of like Lord of the Rings when they have like one, kind of monster army pinned down and they're doing okay. And then all of a sudden another horde comes over like a hill, and starts attacking them. That's what I felt like the reference to these like, Fintech, Insurtech marrying kind of tools where like we just took care of this one Insurtech avenue. We're not scared of it anymore. And then, Mint jumps in and everyone's just losing their mind.
Yep. That's the awesomeness of capitalism. It keeps coming.
Yeah.
Waves and waves and waves. So, I mean, I've come up, I'm going to take this from an insurance standpoint and say, let's call insurance the main product, maybe, and attach a financial piece to it. So I think the podcast that Nigel and I will have. Oh, is he back? Did he lose power on his phone? Did he have to start his car?
Oh, there we go. 2.0.
The power came on?
The power came on, and my phone, I put my phone up on the dashboard of my car, right? And I got one of those temperature warnings.
Awesome.
You guys are awesome for sticking with me. I apologize.
I just roll with it. That's insurance.
No editing. Everyone that's watching, we keep our bloopers. We don't even have a blooper special. We just don't cut them out.
Well, maybe the background's a little better. I got some Chicago stuff for you guys. So yeah,
there you go.
Background
and that bright red shirt. Wow.
It's pink.
Oh,
salmon. Like a heavy salmon.
What battery does that take? 12 volts.
Yeah.
So Pat, I was bringing up, I'm gonna throw a curveball to your particular topic, and this is something that I think Nigel and I will talk about when we have our podcast. So he's coming from like IoT, smart devices, connected homes. I'm thinking something a little bit different. So in Massachusetts, there's a FAIR plan. FAIR plans, for anyone that's listening, it's like the insurer of last resort. It's like a state-run insurance organization. And basically, if you can't buy insurance, homeowners insurance, through a traditional carrier, you can go to the FAIR plan, and the rates are higher, but you can at least get some insurance.
Coverage is lean too, right? Just
It's
like
very
fire,
lean.
nothing else really.
It's lean. It's
Yeah.
leaner and more expensive. It's just like you don't want to be in there if you don't have to be in there.
Right.
So, California has one. There's a bunch of states that have one. I met the CEO of the Fair Plan in California, and she was great. And she gave a speech, and she was very funny because she said, unlike all the other CEOs here on this panel, I am the only one that is actually looking to shrink its business. So she was actually funny that way. And so I came up, or I was thinking, like, in Massachusetts, the vast majority of the homes that are in the Fair Plan are on the coast or on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and that's because once these catastrophe models came out, there was the wind exposure was now very visible to the homeowners carriers, and they were like, we don't want those. So if you look at the Fair Plan, you look at the Cape Cod homes, they're either wind exposure or they're old homes. They're old wood frame beach homes that have knob and tube wiring that are a significant fire risk. That's easily fixed. $10,000, you can put wind-resistant shutters and convert the knob and tube wiring to modern wiring. Why don't we build an insurance product that loans the money, right? Here's the financial aspect. You loan the money to the homeowner. You convert their home from knob and tube wiring to traditional wiring, and you put wind-resistant shutters on the home in case there is a wind event, and you embed the insurance in there. Problem solved. For the homeowner, it's phenomenal because it's hard to sell a knob and tube wired home. The value of the home instantly will surpass the loan that you just took out, and you can get traditional insurance. You get priced as if you have traditional insurance. It's a win-win for everybody. For the carrier, you get another source of income.
It kind of ties into, we were talking about things ahead of the show that'd be worth talking about. Pat talking about underserved markets, and maybe there's a fear or stagnation in decision making, because the only experience I had with the California Fair Plan was a 1908 built home that hadn't really been redone up in like Echo Park, in Los Angeles, that an older couple lived in. Their daughter was trying to keep a policy in place so they won't get, evicted or have, any issues with the city. But yeah, I wonder if it's a stagnation issue. You have these people who've been living there forever, afraid to sign contracts, watching every penny. If you're talking about a major financial commitment, it would have to be spelled out pretty clearly.
It's completely a major financial commitment. So if you think about an insurance transaction, everybody wants the same thing. Nobody really wants a claim. Right. So it's in the insurer's best interest that there are no claims. It's in the insured's interest that there are no claims. But there's this major financial commitment that has to be made in order to reduce the risk. The insured, it's in the Fair Plan. If they wanted to make the commitment, they probably would have already made the commitment. The insurer doesn't want to make the commitment because they could loan $10,000, or they could put $10,000 of repairs in, and then the insured then goes to some other carrier. What ties it all together is the financial element, Pat. The financial piece, the loan, ties it all together. You're signing a loan contract, and the insurance is now embedded into that loan. So for as long as you have that loan, you have insurance. All the pieces are aligned. Everyone's interests are the same.
I could totally see that. It almost reminds me of a program, sorry, Pat, just where they help renters jump into mortgages. But signing up for the Fair Plan was really simple in California. So you'd almost have to have something as simple that would kind of bridge you into the better insurance policy that would help with the home improvements.
It's embedded into the loan.
Yep.
Well, so you see one, I think, clear example, and a partner that HedgeQuote works with is Jetty, right? So they have Jetty Passport. That's about helping property owners and renters with the security deposit. And I think it goes both ways. I don't want to speak for their product too much, but you see that piece, right? And then that ties back to really what I'm getting at here is, if other pieces of the process, the home purchase process, the auto purchase process, consider insurance part of what they're doing, but insurance isn't looking the other way, that data is there. The embedding that Nick just talked about is a reality. And you're already starting to see that. You see that at a minimal level. I shouldn't say minimal, but at a, street level, you see agencies across the country that used to specialize in relocations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now people are buying homes. So now they're new home purchase specialists. They're going to go with the economy. They're going to kind of continue to, I guess, adapt. But this piece of it, when non-traditional transaction points begin to come around, if those pieces are able to, again, I think, attack the insurance market, it's worth looking at. And I think the basis of all of this, quite frankly, is when I worked at State Farm, I was a banker, I was a life insurance agent, I was a property and casualty agent, and I had an investment license. I had 2 investment licenses. And there was a lot of, I guess, activity that occurred between State Farm Bank and the property and casualty premium payment pieces of it. And there was some pretty good tools. A lot of customers utilized the credit card and things like that. And that was 5 years ago. If somebody figures that out for an independent agency model, I think there could be a lot of upheaval. Again, I don't know what the best word to use is, but again, I've tried to focus on the Fintech, Insurtech space and consider them one part of financial services. And there's movement, and it's coming in the form of Fintech players that, some of them I think maybe think insurance is too easy, but they see low-hanging fruit, and I think that they're coming after that and could get really, really interesting.
I just think of like a HIPAA model that uses like 3 data points to get you a quote in like a minute. You bolt something onto that, bolt something similar like that for auto, with national dealerships or something. Just, VIN, driver's license, new car, home, work, punch it in your phone in the parking lot. It could kind of swoop in real quick, at least on that side.
Well, you talked about cover, and a year ago, I wasn't sold at all on cover. I was kind of like, download an app. No, not going to do that. I knew that they were trying to go kind of individual markets, and they came back and said, we're just going to own our own brokerage and we're going to control the kind of consumer experience. And now if you really think about what they're doing, snapping a photo, getting a quote, there's some serious legs with that as far as I'm concerned on just a consumer experience point. And Credit Karma, to me, Credit Karma might be, when you talk about data, they have it all. They have, every loan you've ever had, every credit card you ever had, the data that even, somebody like HIPAA would have to ask the consumer, that's already built in. And it all stems from people wanting a free credit report. I mean, it's all it comes down to.
And they have your attention too. They ping your email. Hey, your credit score's changed. Hop in there. They got a little captive audience.
Exactly.
Every 2 weeks too.
Making recommendations and those types of things. So I think that to me, back to the embeddedness in the consumer journey, it's going to be a tough one to beat if it happens.
Maybe why isn't Credit Karma doing this? Perhaps the reason is, there's still a hangover from when Citibank bought Travelers and put those 2 together. And that was supposed to be the same thing, right? That was supposed to be, we're going to merge, Glass-Steagall fell, these 2 companies merged together, and there's going to be all kinds of awesome financial and insurance products. And man, it fell apart. Like it was just a dud, and now they're separate companies again. And maybe there's a hangover from that. Maybe they're like, well, it's been tried, but I think of this more, I think of it like the Apple Store, if before the Apple Store, if you had asked, like, can retail be successful? Everyone's like, no, absolutely not. Like retail is just like not a good business. You want to be in tech. There's no reason why a tech company should go into retail. Then Apple opens the Apple Store, and it's just like they did it right. And it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with retail. You're just doing it wrong. And I think that's perhaps what Pat's getting to. There's nothing wrong with whether it's the insurance transaction or the financial transaction. We're not doing it right. And part of it is, how do we Are there opportunities? Are there business models to put the two together, to combine things, to bundle things, to put them in interesting ways that actually make customers' lives easier? Credit Karma is awesome because if they have all the data, they could just mail quotes. They could just, they don't have to do any work.
I think we're looking at it like a commoditized product, but if they approached it more in a custom fit product, I think they'd have some strength too. Like the Apple Store isn't jamming as many phones, computers, screens as they can into the store. They're having great fit service. That might be the angle that ends up winning out too. Not price shopping, but fit shopping, and having good advisory kind of recommendations.
And I've thought about that though. So I've thought about that commodity piece of it. And I know that's not that that's what you're doing, but that's always the easy out for an agent is, well, going to provide more quality or more value. But the first 15 questions that a broker's going to ask me, an agent's going to ask me, Credit Karma already knows those answers. Yeah. They've got that data sitting there. And where I continue to see Insurtech, I guess, hit a ceiling is exactly what Nick said earlier about, State Farm had that ceiling because, again, there's only so many State Farm policy holders. There's only so many people that it's going to make sense for. Where I think Credit Karma could just absolutely destroy it is having a true brokerage where they're not aligned with one company. That one company piece, I think, always, I guess, sets a ceiling to things where you're like, great, that's going to be a good tool. And then you can almost do the math backwards based on how many policyholders they have. To me, this Credit Karma thing could happen so fast that, like Nick said, we already know the first 15 questions. They've got the answers. They get those quotes in someone's hands overnight. It's not that we wake up 5 years from now and things are different. It's we wake up 5 weeks from now and Credit Karma is literally pulling 100,000 new users out of the independent agency channel, if you will, because they just decided to go that way, and they decided to. It's so easy. Insurtech, it's so easy to just align with a carrier and be like, we made it, But if you really want to help shoppers, if you really want to give them the scope of it, you're going to have to go and form 20 plus relationships, in my mind.
Well, they could get really creative, right? The marketing could be focused on the commodity aspect, but then as they place the business, there's upsell and value propositions where they could extract more premium. So it doesn't have to be, the marketing could be, hey, here's a really cheap quote. But then you get in there, it's like, okay, you can keep the cheap quote, but here are these other options as well that you may want to consider. And, oh, look, you live in California. You really should consider earthquake insurance. And here's your cheapest option to add this to your policy. Or, hey, you live a mile from the coast. You really should consider flood insurance. And here's your cheapest. Like they could get creative if they wanted to.
And they're already there making that recommendation. And you skip the consumer recognizing the need, the consumer acting and finding somebody that actually helps them and writes that policy. Those types of things, it takes a couple hours. It takes weeks. I procrastinate. I've got to send pictures for somebody hit our bumper on our car. I'm going through a claim. I'm a licensed insurance professional. I should have sent the pictures 5 days ago. And I'm going to send them before my wife drives out on Monday morning to go to work. We have to be realistic about where we're at. And like you said, insurance is cool to talk to with a lot of insurance people. The consumer side of it, I think you have to dig a little deeper to get them excited. So if they're in that conversation, if they're getting the info that they think is important through somebody that they've already given their social security number to, and ran a credit report with, there's a lot of trust that they've already have in that platform. There's a lot of data that platform's spitting back to them. And yeah, I believe in value. If anybody watches this and says, Pat doesn't like agencies, that's crazy. I mean, I'm a champion of them as well, but they won't even have the time to have that conversation. It won't be, I'm valuable because of XYZ. It will be, I never knew your name because you never called me and you never came around because Credit Karma had the info and did it.
It sounds as though Credit Karma should just hire HedgeQuote and build this program for them.
They should just get me a megaphone, and I'll just get an RV. I'll just go around.
You have the megaphone. It's called the attachment point.
Exactly.
the round table. So, okay. So let's transition over to, last but not least, Brett and his topic before we call it a day.
It's a very serious topic. These things need to be deliberated on and kind of hammered out a little bit. But we did predict, actually, I think I predicted right. LeBron James is going to Los Angeles, which I have notes on this. I reflected on this as part of my show prep. But I feel like it was a 75% a family decision, 25% basketball with some legacy in there. And I feel like if he can deliver one ring in the next 4 years, kind of like what he did in Cleveland, he'll feel like it's a success. And then he's just waiting for his kid to turn into like a $500 million athlete. So came here to nurture that too. But it's going to be weird. I like the Celtics, which I like kind of annoying people in Orange County and LA County with. But he's going to be everywhere. Billboards, advertisements. It's going to be LeBron James fest for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So it'll be interesting.
I have to give credit where credit's due. First of all, you nailed it.
Yeah.
I don't think this was a basketball decision. That's why I picked Philly.
Yeah.
I picked Philly because I thought Philly would be the basketball decision. I mean, you have it's the East.
Mm-hmm.
I thought from a basketball standpoint, he's going to want to stay in the East because that's like, him being there gives him a much easier route to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the playoffs, anything can happen. So you want to get as far as you can, as easily as you can. The West is it's a minefield.
Right.
And navigating that is difficult. Plus, Paul George had signed the day before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's no Paul George. That basically leaves okay, he's got to get Kawhi Leonard.
I think they're writing off this year.
There's no guarantee of getting Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, even if they get Kawhi Leonard, that they're a champion. They get to the finals.
Right.
And then Golden State signs DeMarcus Cousins, and I'm just like, I'm not sure LeBron James is ever going to win another championship.
But
my opinion.
Achilles injured Boogie Cousins, though. Boogie's a funny dude.
It's true. But even without Boogie Cousins, I'm not this year.
Mm-hmm.
Lakers are going to be middle of the pack. My opinion.
Maybe the Celtics chased him out, even though they didn't win. Maybe he just was scared. He saw them coming. He's like, I don't want to lose to those guys.
Of course. Pat, from a Chicago perspective.
Yeah, the home of the GOAT.
Yeah. So it's a professional decision, and I think I was with Brett on it too. That this went beyond basketball. This went. LeBron, I think one thing I've always respected about him was it seemed like he made decisions and geared his life towards his family and included them in that. And I think in a lot of ways, it seems as if LA to him is a better opportunity. But if there's any reason anybody wants to be in LA, I think it's Magic Johnson on a basketball level. Just to have somebody like that in your corner on a ending your career level, and then moving into the professional side of things, which I think LeBron wants to be a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's probably even said that. So to me, those aspects, I thought LA, and I heard the Clippers as kind of that whisper. And I thought, okay, maybe that's that side of him that just wants to go and revive a team that maybe doesn't have the first, that first standing in the city. But LA makes total sense for somebody like him. And I think you're going to see him in a lot more movies. If you want to drive NASCAR, you move to Charlotte.
Space Jam 2.
Yeah, you want to drive NASCAR, you move to Charlotte. If you want to be in movies and you want to be in the entertainment business, I think you move to LA. So no part of me was surprised about that. If I'm Cleveland, I'm holding on to Ryan Hanley and hoping Elevate keeps coming back to Cleveland because with LeBron gone, maybe I have high hopes for the Indians this year in the MLB side of things, but him not being there anymore is not going to make that place any more fun. That's for sure.
I don't think it's good. I don't think they're going to have the massive drop off they had the last time he left. The pieces that are there are not crap. Larry Nance, okay, he's good. Good player. Clarkson, good player. George Hill, quality. Solid player. The rookie seems to have some skills.
Mm-hmm.
Tristan Thompson's a good rebounder, and Kevin Love's, he's not he's not the world's best player, but he's all-star potential quality. I mean, the pieces are there. They could potentially vie for an 8 seed. I don't think they'll make it.
Easy. Yeah.
It won't be as drastic a drop off as they had the last time. And now with all these pieces gone, they're well under the cap.
Mm-hmm.
And they have some flexibility to kind of do some things. I feel bad for them.
I think they'll be fine. I think they're going to flip for Kemba Walker maybe, because I guess Charlotte really liked the point guard that Cleveland drafted. And then I think they're going to turn Kevin Love into some younger dudes. And then my other theory on Kevin Love was he got too skinny. He had good chubby man basketball in Minnesota. Then for some reason he got too skinny and it just wasn't quite the same. It wasn't as much of a bumper and, an aggressive guy. But yeah, I think they'll be fine. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the bottom half of the bracket in the East,
Well, what gets lost, I think, in the whole conversation is how good Kevin Durant is. And I'm not saying he doesn't get credit.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. But Kevin Durant's probably the best basketball player in the world. I feel confident in that. He's so good. And I think the idea that he moved to a super team is something that basketball fans, maybe in my generation, our generation, are going to have to, I think, adapt to, because it isn't going to be, I want to retire a Bull, I want to retire a Nick. It's I want to have XYZ championships, and the league probably won't be the same anymore, but I still think that it's so, take off the top few that are just so good. The other teams that are out there have so many dynamic players, so many exciting players that you can flip the NBA on now, and I can flip it on, I can watch a game. Doesn't matter who's playing. There's some superstars on the court, and I can get excited about. And I see NBA on the upward trajectory. Mm-hmm. LeBron being in LA is only going to increase that on a dollar level.
It's gotten a lot more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, and I have really, since the Bird Jordan era, it's I did watch it when the Celtics won the championship and they were playing LA, but it dropped off dramatically for me personally, and now it's like I can't wait. This year is going to be so much fun. There's so much drama going on. There's so much, and as much as I will crap on LeBron James, the dude's great.
Yeah,
he keeps his nose clean. He's a family guy. I mean, there's nothing but respect there. I hate him because, because
kept beating up Boston.
That's right. As far as Kevin Durant, no doubt, one of the greats. I have lost respect though. Like when it comes, and I know of course he doesn't care. The Warriors fans don't care, but when it comes to, if you're asking me my opinion about like the greatest of all time, and you're using championships as a criteria, his championship doesn't mean anything to me because the Warriors probably could have won without him. Maybe.
I think Rush just wasn't passing the ball, and I also think he doesn't mind being in the background, so he could be a great player, and it's still Steph's team. Kind of like why I think Paul George hung out in OKC. I don't think he wanted the limelight. He seems a little bit more, kind of mellow background, especially after his injury. But I'm stealing all those takes from Bill Simmons and the BS podcast. But yeah, and KD too. If Golden State had won that year, it's a good chance he ends up a Celtic. I think. During that whole thing 2 years ago.
You mean if OKC had won that year?
Or sorry, if Golden State had won instead of losing to Cleveland.
Yeah.
I think he couldn't go to a champion. He wanted out of OKC, and it seemed like it was the Celtics and Golden State neck and neck for his services. So it's kind of crazy.
He does seem to like San Francisco. Like he seems like, from my understanding, he's at a minimum, he's an active angel at this point. Mm-hmm. He gets excited about tech programs and platforms and things like that.
Yeah.
Going back to LeBron being in LA, I think you find yourself in a scenario where you're like, hey, this is a community I like to live in on top of everything else. Kevin Durant, I mean, he seems up to and including being a Twitter troll. Like he's that into Silicon Valley that he's R&D in what it's like to be a Twitter troll. That's
fine, but I think Pat, you'll appreciate this. Take Michael Jordan. for instance, right? And what he did. So he won 3 consecutive championships twice. They were essentially 2 different teams, with the only consistent element of that would be like Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson. But I look at those teams, and when these comparisons between Jordan and LeBron, and I look at what he did with those teams, I don't care what anyone says, even the team that won 72 games. That was not like, you look at that team and you look at the players, it was a great team assembled, but the players themselves were not that great.
I would say it was on as sparse as OKC was this last year. You had Scotty, who was an all-timer, who just is slightly underappreciated. They had a ton of wins without him that one year, but I don't think the talent level was crazy. They had a couple bigs, they had a couple shooters, but it wasn't like
Bill Wennington.
Yeah, exactly.
Was Bill Wennington on the first 3 or the second 3?
I want to say the first.
Bill Wennington, back end, right?
He was the back end, right? So you had Steve Kerr.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, a great spot-up shooter, but he can't create any offense on his own. Dennis Rodman's a head case.
Yeah.
Luke Longley. I mean, what are we talking about here? Like, Scotty Kukoc was Tony Kukoc was okay. You basically had Pippen, world-class player. You had Jordan, world-class player. You had the right coach, right? I mean, I don't think this Cleveland Cavaliers team had a lot of really solid players.
Oh yeah, I think they were better bottom down. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, there's just Jordan's 6 championships with the teams that he had. I'm sorry, like it's more valuable. I don't care if Kevin Durant wins 8. To me, it's like you took the easy route. If he had won the championship with OKC, he'd be on a pedestal, a mile high. It's not the same. I just, I'm trying to compare Durant to like Barkley or Karl Malone, and all great players. Durant's championships, or the 2 that he has, doesn't affect the conversation. Still great, but I
cannot
put him in like a Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, echelon. Just what they did was just different.
Right. So do this. Next time you see Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, obviously I would assume on TV together, watch Scotty's reaction to like seeing Michael. That's not just hey, we went through stuff and like we were champions together. When you see Scotty hug Michael, it's almost like, you did so much for my life. Thank you. And that's how I felt like that Bulls team.
Yeah.
They were Jordan was just so much better than everybody else that he made all those guys look like superstars. And, that's a biased opinion from a Chicago fan. But if you take it and you look at the way all of those people talk about each other, the way they react when they see each other, Michael Jordan meant something to those. He meant the championships to his teammates, where Steph and Kevin are probably figuring that out. I mean, LeBron's probably, winning 1 or 2, but I don't see, without Michael Jordan, none of those guys are really who they are nowadays. In my mind, I don't see that with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. They're going to be at that top level no matter what, and they're probably going to have a good shot at championships. But
it's almost like
it's different.
Like an offensive Pistons with the Warriors versus Jordan just elevating everybody. I feel like Jordan's punching people in the face during practice. The Celtics during that run would talk about practice as being a war. I just think supreme competitor, toughness elevated the culture. And I'm still a culture guy when it comes to sports. You set the tone in the locker room. It'll handle business. And not picking on LeBron or Cleveland at all, but I heard they weren't practicing that much. And I heard it wasn't a grind, it wasn't a war day in, day out. And I think Jordan just wins for best competitor of all time,
There was, if there's a YouTube video of Patrick Ewing talking about Michael Jordan, he's like, listen, LeBron James is a great guy, a great basketball player. He said, Michael Jordan's an assassin. I believe that. I believe that. I believe he on the court, he wants to murder you. There's no qualms about that.
Mentally and physically.
Yeah. Do I think does that diminish LeBron? Not at all. It's just that's the assassin characteristic is you're great, and this is just something a little bit more on top. That is, he will do absolutely anything it takes. And I honestly, like, if I had to choose which player I'd want to play with, I'd probably want to play with LeBron because he's gonna pass the ball, right?
Jordan, fun to hang out with.
Jordan's not, but it's I don't know. We like got off a wicked tangent on this, but I don't think LeBron's gonna win another championship.
I think he might get one second, third year in LA with the team set up, but Celtics are coming too. I mean, I'm biased obviously in that one.
Just look what he has to overcome. Like, I think if Houston can stay and keep Chris Paul,
he's going to get hurt. He's older though. I don't see him having the legs, and I think the contracts will blow up Golden State.
Golden State's going to be tough to beat, but you know, these things could fall apart. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. They're young. And they have all the pieces. If they can keep those pieces in place, they're going to be tough to beat for a long time. And I do think the Celtics and the 76ers in the East are going to be brutal to handle if they get, you know, if Kawhi goes to, like, let's say Philly, and the Celtics get like another key piece. When they get one of those teams gets to the finals, it's going to be brutal to try to beat those teams. Lakers are going to have to go through a minefield just to get to the finals. I don't think they win a championship. Pat, do you think they win a championship?
No.
Good.
I love LeBron, but no. I mean, there's no way. This is back end of the career. This is, you know, being where you want to be for the rest of your life scenario anymore. And I thought when Shaq said, "Oh, don't leave Cleveland to chase rings," leaving Cleveland didn't necessarily equate to chasing rings in my mind. I always looked at it again.
Chasing a ring would have been going to Philly, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Some place that was so close to Cleveland that people could still hear you beating them in the corner.
Yeah.
You know, that you don't want that.
I salute him. I salute him. To me, this was not a basketball decision. He took the tough road. Yeah. If he wins a championship with Cleveland, this will be as big as him winning a championship with I'm sorry, if he wins a championship with Los Angeles, the Lakers, that'll be as big as him winning a championship with Cleveland.
That might be what he's thinking too, like different challenge championships.
Sure.
But, yeah.
That could put him into an echelon that's, you know, but and I think Shaq was right. I mean, he's already considered the greatest of all time by a lot of people. Not me, but a lot of people. And it doesn't matter. Like, how many more championships does he have to win? Like, there's still, like, as far as I'm going, he could win 8. I'm still going to think Michael Jordan's a better player.
Yeah, Jordan's the GOAT. Yeah.
You know,
LeBron has made the NBA popular since I was getting into college at this point, right? So I think that piece of it, greatest of all time, is obviously fun to debate. But what LeBron was able to do from an elevation level inside the NBA, the NBA was rough. I mean, it was difficult to get excited about. Even when he was in high school, that hype from high school right into the NBA got me excited about the game. And I think that he did it the right way, fortunately. And regardless of best or not, the NBA owes him as much as Michael Jordan in a lot of ways because of the timing and the manner in which he went about his business. Because I love Michael Jordan, but would he survive the Facebook, Twitter era? Would he have been as popular in the Facebook, Twitter era? It's not something I would go into, but I think he would have had to adjust. He wouldn't have been able to be the same Michael Jordan he was at that time. So
casinos till 3 a.m., you know, day before games.
The spotlight piece of it, LeBron deserves whatever the beyond the Hall of Fame is, you know, the impact on the game and allowing it to sustain and really come back from a bad spot will be what I'll remember LeBron for, beyond just the physical. God, he's just fun to watch.
He created the Warriors too. We can blame him for you know, that army that he inspired to come together. You know?
Oh yeah.
So. Well, we went way over. Before we started, I'm like, I hope this is like 30 minutes. We doubled that. So
there you go.
Awesome, guys. Sorry for going over. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Pat, you're welcome to come on to the Roundtable at any time.
I love it. Love talking to you guys. Thanks for letting me do multiple locations, multiple
yeah.
sceneries.
Awesome.
Higher production value. There you go.
Okay,
Appreciate
everyone
you
that's
guys,
watching.
man. Really do. Appreciate you guys a lot.
Yeah, same. Awesome, guys. For
Catch
those
you
of you
soon.
that are watching, the Attachment Point Roundtable, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Cheers.